Who says tech can't be human?
Hello, everyone. We have a very special treat for you today. It seems like what is old is new again. In the very beginning of our show, we talked a lot about the MITRE assessment, but today we have some representatives from CrowdStrike that are going to be talking about the assessment, what it meant to go through that journey, and what they plan on doing with it. Ron, who do we have with us today?
Today we have Andrew Munchbach and also Joel Spurlock. I will let them do the introduction. They are both from CrowdStrike. Andrew, let's start with you.
Yeah, thanks very much for having us. Appreciate it. As you mentioned, my name is Andrew Munchbach. I'm the Vice President of Field Engineering at CrowdStrike. I've been at the company about 7 years, and there have been 4 MITRE evaluations thus far, and I have been involved in some form or fashion. I'm usually the hands behind the keyboard for all 4, so it's nice to be here.
Yeah, my name is Joel Spurlock. I'm the Senior Director for Malware Research. I also participate and help with the public testing and evaluation. And it's a pleasure to be here to talk about the process, what we went through, what we learned. We're very happy with the outcome, too.
Fantastic. Let's set the scene for a little bit. What exactly is the MITRE assessment, and why do companies go for it?
So the MITRE ATT&CK evaluation is essentially it's an evaluation that measures the ability of a product to describe behavior in using the attack language. And so for those of you who don't know about the attack language, it's a taxonomy that was created by the MITRE Corporation. And it allows us to all speak in a common language about security. It's been a real big innovation. It's become sort of the de facto standard. You measure your product by attack. You understand and communicate your coverage by attack. And the MITRE ATT&CK evaluation essentially measures the ability of a product to be successful in using that language.
I mean, one of the reasons for those that aren't intimately in the weeds, one of the reasons it's super important is, if you're an operator, right? If you're in the field, you're deploying a bunch of different products to build out a security stack. Those products are made by a bunch of different vendors. Previously, before attack, what would happen is, your firewall might say one thing. It might see the same part of an attack, and it would describe it using that vendor's whatever they chose to use as sort of descriptors. And then, you would go to your endpoint, and it would, whatever vendor you had there, they would use their descriptors. And then, you go to your email gateway, whatever descriptors. Now that we've all sort of standardized on attack, if you're looking sort of across a very broad spectrum, you see some behavior in your environment and it's very related, and you're looking at different pieces of technology, even if it's from different vendors, we're all speaking the same language, right? Before it was like, the firewall speaking Russian, the endpoint speaking English, and then the email gateway speaking French, and you kind of got to do this gymnastics in your head, and it just wasted time. It was very hard for people that are behind the keyboard and operating these tools to really get the most value out of them. But now that we've sort of standardized, it's become much simpler. And to Joel's point, I mean, it's been a huge leap forward.
No matter where you go, you hear MITRE ATT&CK, MITRE this, MITRE that. Are my use cases covered? Do I have technology for these use cases? And, I would like to hear a bit from your perspective. How do we get to this point to where everyone is using MITRE ATT&CK? What did it change for the industry? And also, what did it change in your perspective in light?
It's actually an interesting question. If you want to talk about what it changed in the industry, that's a pretty broad space. Like, I can't count on my fingers the number of frameworks that have come out to describe threat modeling using MITRE ATT&CK, new ways to measure in public testing, new products around, translating new events into MITRE ATT&CK, everything from, EDR to SIEM to endpoint, to public cloud, ICS. They're all like, how do I use MITRE ATT&CK to describe what's going on? That's both a really good thing, in terms of, like the explainability, the translation that Andrew mentioned. But it's also a bit of a challenge because, it's important not to lose sight of the problems that you're trying to solve, with having that common language. Andrew, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think to go back to the beginning of the question, it probably started about 4 or 5 years ago. I think it really started to take off. MITRE kind of came out with this, and they had a fairly basic set of descriptors that they would use, right? And so it sort of starts with tactic, which is sort of like what you want to do, and then moves into technique, which is like how you would achieve that thing. And they've just expanded it, and they've done a really great job over the years. And as they've done so, and as more vendors have kind of hopped on, it's obviously grown in popularity. And as you guys know, we're on a podcast talking about it exclusively, right? Or a vodcast. I don't know what I should technically call it. It's really exploded, and it's been super beneficial. To the other part of your question, there is a lot of talk about it, right? That people always, as a vendor, they're like, show me a heat map, show me where you map, like where are you good, where are you bad, and there's a little risk in that, which we can sort of get into if you want. But those are some of the things that we've seen over the last few years, and it with every gift, there's a little bit of a curse, and so we kind of see both of that with the attack framework.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw the framework of MITRE ATT&CK. It probably was around 5 years ago. Ron and I were working together at a startup, and I was doing threat intelligence. And I said, this is everything. This is how you enable communication between not only technology, but people in general. So this really set the stage for a lot of communication that's happening today. And when they came out with the assessment, I thought, this is absolutely genius. You have to give us a peek behind the curtain, under the hood. For a company that's getting ready to gear up for this assessment, what are the things that you thought about, the things you were concerned about? Tell us the story of leading up to the assessment.
Yeah, so there's a couple things that probably want to point out right away. So when the assessment, every assessment the year is different, right? So in round one, it was a different test with different criteria. MITRE has matured along with the rest of the industry and how to measure this. But they do out a call for participation, and they name a couple threat actors. They generate a call for intelligence as well, so they want to understand beyond just what the open source intelligence says to figure out how to build their tradecraft. We participate in that. We share some of our knowledge with them, and we also use how do we say we study the actors. This is just part of our normal everyday job. We're pretty religious about making sure that we've got an excellent defense. So we will take the threat actors that they labeled, and we'll go back over our product capability. We'll build kill chains. We'll run adversary emulation. We want to make sure that we've got really, really effective capability. And depending on when the actual test evaluation gets scheduled, we have more or less time to do that. It's a pretty significant effort in terms of measuring, and occasionally we find opportunities to improve, and that's we want to make sure we have really excellent capability. One of the things that I think about from the evaluation is when the measure becomes a target. So this is a famous Goodhart's law. You'll see opportunities for that failing in a number of places. My favorite example is a banking example, but I'll let you go look that one up yourself. The MITRE wants their stated goal is improve and help the industry and incentivize the industry to improve, and they are looking for explainability. Basically make cybersecurity accessible. And you can see that in the attack language. You can also see it in how they choose to measure. We want to make sure that we're sort of adhering to the spirit of those. We're constantly innovating and making sure we have good coverage, but we want to make sure that the target is building meaningful capability and evaluating our product in a way that stops breaches. That's our mission. Our mission is not to score the best number on an evaluation. My team, drives a lot of the public security evaluations, both with MITRE and with other vet organizations. And we only participate in tests that help us make the product better. and work towards that mission of stopping breaches and having a first class product. So that's how I think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I can add on. Joel's team takes kind of the brunt of this, right? And we're closely involved and work pretty tight together. But once you throw your hat in the ring, you say, I want to participate in this evaluation. You know who the threat actors are. Luckily for CrowdStrike, one of our oldest business lines is a fully bona fide intelligence organization. So when they tell us who they're going to model their tradecraft after, we have a fairly good dossier on these. This year it was Voodoo Bear and Wizard Spider. So an e-crime operator that basically operates ransomware and botnets, and then sort of a targeted nation state actor. Both of which we've been following, I think, for over 6 or 7 years. Wizard Spider is a little newer, so not quite that long. But so what Joel's team will do and what my team will assist with is we sort of build out kill chains. We say, okay, if this threat actor were to weaponize, like what's their usual tradecraft? And it starts with, maybe they start with spear phishing. Maybe they come in with compromised credentials. Maybe they go after cloud accounts, right? And you try to build out sort of in your mind based on historical data you have and historical operations that performed, what are they likely to do? And so you test that, right? You basically red team yourself over and over and over again, and you keep tweaking and tuning and twisting and say, well, what if they did this? Well, what if they did that? As you prepare for this to make sure that, any sort of gaps you may have or may not have, are well covered.
Outstanding. You got to take us to the very, very beginning when you say, all right, we're going to participate this year. Do you cue the Rocky music, bring everybody into the war room and strategize, or what does that look like? Give us a peek.
First thing I do is have an anxiety attack because it's super, right? It's not a test, but everyone treats it as a test, right? It's an evaluation. MITRE is a bunch of scientists. They're super smart, right? Mm-hmm. They say, we don't score this, but they kind of score it. And so stage 1 is immediately have a panic attack, and then you move on to stage 2, which Joel, you could rock on.
Yeah. I mean, there's it's an interesting question when you dig into the process and how you respond. Every test is different every year. Mm. And unfortunately, the evaluation drives forward cybersecurity, but it's also a marketing exercise. And that's, we want to make sure that our product shows well when we perform in the test. And that it's unfortunate that becomes part of the calculation because we have to go in and look at, okay, so how do we perform last year? What is MITRE looking for this year that's different from last year? Because it's a different test. They're not, right. Like this year, they're not evaluating detection. You think about it, it's a detection test, but the reality is it's a language test. And understanding that helps us figure out what they're looking for, how to achieve that explainability. It is somewhat of it's an experience. You walk through hundreds of techniques and tradecrafts and specific example. Okay, we're doing lateral movement with SSH. Okay, so what does the customer want? Like, what's the right thing to do to stop the breach? And then we also have to ask ourselves that extra question. Well, so what is MITRE looking for? Because they're not always the same thing. And that's probably the different extra work that occurs when an evaluation. When we sign up for evaluation, we have to start preparing and we walk through all those kill chains and we, test every single thing that the actor had done a dozen different ways. Ultimately, we look at it in terms of, visibility. Can you actually see, can a threat hunter reasonably identify the tradecraft? We look at it, should we detect it? Not all of these things should be detected. In terms of generating an alert, but we want to make sure that we provided the relevant context to a SOC analyst so that he can understand what's going on. And then of course should it be prevented? And again, that's a as much of an art as a science to figure out where the right places to interrupt kill chain is to be successful and do it in a way that doesn't kill the a product's performance or make a whole bunch of noise for a customer, because that really just takes away from the value of the your ability to stop a breach if you have 500 alerts to look through, right? MITRE adds that extra element. how did it, is the information we presented, did it meet the MITRE label? And most of the time we don't have a huge difference there, and it's a pretty clean way to move forward. Every once in a while, it doesn't, and that's a little bit of extra work to make sure we sort of pass that explainability notion.
Looking at the MITRE evaluation and also hearing the story a bit, it almost makes me think of an audit. Like you're auditing your use cases and how well your technology can discover or alert analysts and engineers based off of those use cases. And with any audit, there's assumptions. When I was working in corporate security, I would have all these assumptions about the capabilities of my tools and processes. But what I would learn when the audit came around was there would be some gaps. Were there any assumptions that you all made, when embarking on this evaluation journey? What were some of the assumptions and what were some of the surprises along the way?
Yeah, I was gonna say it'd probably be good to talk about like the format of the test, because that's kind of, it's like MITRE does this test and it's, what's it look like? Because it sort of helps when you describe it as an audit. It's not a bad comparison, but it might not be one-to-one. So, right, you throw your hat in the ring. I have my panic attack. Joel and my team, we go to work. We model all this tradecraft, and then test day comes. So it's 4 straight days, right, with MITRE, 8 hours a day. And so if you're wondering who the strongest people in cybersecurity are, it's probably the MITRE Ingenuity team, because you figure 29 vendors, 4 days a week, 26 weeks is half of a year, right? So for 6+ months, this is all they're doing, is just giving this evaluation, which I would probably drink hemlock, but luckily I don't have to. Right, I don't have to be part of that experience. And then the other probably 5 months, they're actually developing the next one. So it's just this nonstop cycle. So it's 4 days. This year it was day 1. They tested one of the threat actors. Day 2, they tested the second threat actor. Day 3 is a retest day if you want it. And day 4 was actually a day they did prevention, which they did last year as well, which is cool. The setup is not really analogous to real world, only because they set up a closed range. There's only about 4 or 5 systems in them. They're going to attack them, right? So there's no environmental noise. There's no, just the user in their cubicle just checking their email, right? 4 systems set up. All of them are going to get experience some form of tradecraft. So you can, the vendors can cheat a little bit. They can tune the knobs like way up to 11. Where in a production environment, right, that's just a recipe for disaster. And then you go to war. And the difference is MITRE does something and then they tell you exactly what they did, right? So there's no, that investigation piece, which really kind of measures a product, where it's like, I don't know what happened, I have to figure it out, is kind of removed from the test. It's, it's very structured. They do, okay, this is step 1A1, this is step 1A2. Please present evidence to me that you saw this. And then they don't score you because they tell you you can't win, it's not a test, but they evaluate you on about 4 or 5 categories, or it might be 6. It's none, which is you did not see what I did. There's telemetry, which is you have signal that shows me what I did. There's general, which means you created some sort of detection for this, even though it might not be what we're looking for. There's tactic, which is you saw what we did and you put the MITRE language on it. And then there's technique, which is you saw it and you put the MITRE technique language on it. And those are the evaluations. So, you see all these buckets, right, where it's like, there were, I think, 109 sub-steps this year. And that's what those general scores are when you see like 108 out of 109. I think we were 105 out of 109. And, you kind of go that way. To Joel's point, it's a little subjective because, we had 4, what MITRE categorizes as misses, but the platform has that data. Like we're showing it to them, they're like, yeah, this isn't really what we're looking for. But an analyst could figure it out. So there's a little bit of a mercy in there. And so that's how the test is sort of structured, right? And it's fun. To Joel's point, the aftermath where, 29 vendors take the test and 29 vendors declare ultimate victory, that is the least favorite part of the entire experience, I think, for everyone involved. So.
Yeah. It was a really, like when we ran the test this year, it was fun to see the new capability. We were able to bring a bunch of enhancements to the platform, and we, especially on prevention day, but I'll get to that in a second. So, the first thing that we're, this is the year we got to bring our identity capability, which was really compelling. that helped us, basically present visibility in a way that is really appealing when you're moving across remote desktop. And we could say, oh, look, it's a this actor is using this stolen identity that's at this level of risk, and we could present all that information. It was a really nice way to highlight and show and see the whole platform working together well. And that was something that was really exciting. We went into day 3 after having presented evidence for 99% of the steps. So 108 out of 109, we actually showed them like really good stuff. And then we did one configuration change that enabled us to get credit for where we didn't have it previously. And this is an interesting notion of the test and the way it works. They walk through all the steps, like Andrew mentioned, 1A1, 1A2. This is what we did, and you get access to that while it's running. And on day 3, essentially, they give you an opportunity to change your product to see if you can score additional credit. So it's like, we gave you the answer to the test, and can you fill in the right little bubble? And then which is a couple of vendors have done that in the past.
Yeah, that was well, so when that didn't happen the first year, that wasn't allowed. The second year it wasn't allowed, and I didn't do that. The third year it was allowed. I did do that, but then for some reason all the other vendors didn't do that, so we were like the only ones, and I was like, "Ooh, that was my fault." And so then this year we were back to like, we're not tuning any knobs on day 3. We're just putting the product in default state. We're turning stuff on, as it exists, and we're just letting it ride. So that's how it kind of went this year.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, and honestly, really happy with the hitting the right notes. One of the things that I thought was really fascinating, and to the point just made a few minutes ago, everybody declares a win. In this year, a huge number of vendors did configuration changes. Like, nobody actually got 100%. There were a couple vendors that at the end they were able to fill in the bubble with the answer MITRE gave them, but nobody actually got 100% on the first go around. And I think that's good because it shows that MITRE is starting to build a decent test. But it also, like, some of the tradecraft they build doesn't quite match what the adversaries actually do. And we if it's too far afield, then a lot more products will tend to miss it. Yeah, I'd love to actually share an anecdote around the prevention too. So we had a lot of fun with prevention. I'm going to give this one to Andrew because I think it's his baby.
Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, it's fun, sort of like, I don't know, hurt so good type of fun. But one of the things Joel mentioned is we brought this identity capability. So there was actually a domain controller in the range this year, which there hasn't always been. And one of the things that product does is, it baselines and, looks at anomalous user behavior, and they set the range up about 2 weeks before. And part of the thing is install your product and just make sure, like, we're going to mess around with the range a little bit. They're not going to show you any of their tradecraft, but we want to make sure that, things are stable, nothing crashes, all that good stuff. So we did that. But one of the things the identity product does is it starts to kind of learn and baseline, like off what's happening on a domain controller. And so to MITRE's credit, one of the things they did, their first step was, okay, I have a compromised password. I'm going to log in to the system using a valid account, right? Initial access valid accounts. And it actually, we forgot to turn that part of the product off because it's on by default, and actually stopped them because they grabbed a known compromised password from a historical breach off of, like, have I been pwned? And the product wouldn't let them log in. And it took us like 4 or 5 minutes to figure out, we're like, your stuff's broken. Like, why don't you just reset your password? And then finally we figured it out. It was our fault. And we actually had to disable the capability so the test could start. But it's kind of it was like a unintentional aha moment where we're like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, we've been saying it works and totally works. So it was fun to see.
That's pretty cool. What I have in my mind is almost like you have your team for the science fair. And in this science fair, you go in one at a time and present what you have. Explain to us the atmosphere. Is it a friendly atmosphere where they're hoping for you, they're rooting for you to catch everything? Or is it a little bit more subdued and they're just like, oh, that's not good enough, check box? Like, tell us a little bit about the environment, the atmosphere, and even the people that helped you out with the assessment.
Yeah, I mean, the first couple of rounds we were in DC, right, before pre-COVID, right? We were live, and it was kind of cool, right? You're on a big conference table, and you're kind of looking at each other, and it's like, it's literally like a duel, right? Like they're on one side, they got their laptops, you're on the other side. Super friendly, right? Really professional, very nice team. Last 2 years have been obviously because of world events have been done over Zoom, so it's a little bit different. It's super. I mean, I'll let Joel speak for himself, but it's super cordial, right? They ask for detail. You can show them detail. If they want a little more, they'll ask for a little more. If they're interested, they'll be like, "Hey, how did you do that?" And Joel and his team will explain like kind of how the mousetrap works. And it really is pretty cordial. Again, their stated goal is to kind of push the industry forward, and they do a really good job. Right? No point is it ever, in my opinion, adversarial or are they trying to hoodwink you at all. It's very above board. And go ahead, Joel, I'll let you go.
They encourage you. They're like, oh, you got a feature over here. That's the next step. Let me take a screenshot of that one real quick. That happens a whole bunch, so we'll have a conversation like, oh, do you have anything that maybe looks like this? And so the way each step is approached, they will say, hey, we did these three things, and we're looking for evidence on step one, and it looks like this. And so we'll go hunt through our UIs and our threat hunting capabilities, and we'll find what we think MITRE is looking for, and we'll throw up 3 or 4 screenshots, and then they will say, oh, that exactly covers what we're looking for. Let's just move on to the next step. Sometimes they'll say, oh, well, maybe if you have something that looks a little bit more like this, and then go back and we'll hunt a little bit more. And how about this one? It's some of it is the way that you achieve the language isn't advertised, and it's actually changed over years. So we run round 3, we run round 4. Each one has got slightly different criteria, and MITRE's really honest about it. Like, we've changed the criteria a little bit this year. So what you did last year isn't enough. Let's see if you got a little bit more. But they're not always 100% transparent in what success looks like. It's part of their leveling their grading process, where they compare, and this is like 29, 30 vendors, I think it was this year. They take all the screenshots. So if you imagine you've got 30 vendors times 109 steps this year, times a dozen screenshots per vendor, and they have to figure out who got what, and just like going through all of that would make your eyeballs bleed. And they're very they're very patient with it, and we had a really good experience with our evaluator this year as well.
So we've been talking about like the journey to get to that point, and also some of the elements that went into the assessment. When you think back to beginning the journey all the way to like getting started with the assessment and working back and forth with the MITRE team, what stories come to mind for both of you? Like, what is a impactful or a surprise story that you picked up along the way that is worth sharing? Let's start with you, Andrew.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, one of the people who kind of got us first involved, I'm not sure if we were the first, but we were one of the first endpoint vendors to actually introduce attack into our UI. So we ripped out all of our language, right? We took the old stuff out, and we started putting in attack language where we could, which earned us a lot of credit with MITRE, because they were trying to sort of bootstrap and get this thing off the ground. When we did, I think it was the second evaluation, which might have been Stone Panda or APT3. We had this capability that we call CrowdScore, so we can dynamically rate an incident over time, right? Like, and we kind of talk about this. One of the things that's really, really hard when you're creating an endpoint tool is like time is against you, because what some of the older tools do, and the lazy thing to do, is like at runtime, like this thing wants to happen right now. Is it good or bad? Yes or no, right? And you have to make that decision. And you have to make some assumptions typically, and if your assumptions are wrong, then you've made a wrong decision. One of the things I really like about our product is it divorces that, right? Like you can make a decision now, something can happen, and you can retroactively say, nope, no, then kind of terminate a behavior or make a correction. So we have this dynamic engine that kind of does this in the background, and it rates your entire instance, right? So if you're using our product, it kind of gives you, it's almost like a DEF CON, right? So it's 1 to 100, with 100 being like light your hair on fire, put the kids to bed, it's time to go, and 0 being, everything's fine. It does that for each sort of incident too. So this was kind of a beta capability, and we had it kind of up on the side because it wasn't really ready for prime time yet. And as MITRE was kind of going through their test, you'd see like, okay, here's an incident. And it would start at like a 1 and then go to a 2 and then a 5 and then a 6. And it was just kind of slowly going up. And then another one will pop up as they kind of hit another machine. So, it was very, that example is very inward looking. Like something surprising was like, we had this capability. We weren't sure if it was going to work. We brought it to the MITRE test range, and lo and behold, it kind of got proved out. That was one of the things that probably I'll remember about, the tests that have happened so far, and was pretty impactful to me anyways, because it was, it went from theoretical to operational very, very quickly after that. So it was really cool.
Nice. Well, what about you, Joel? What story stands out, going into the process up to that point?
Going into the process, I suppose I have one of the things that we did this year is we put a whole bunch of we have our fusion capability, which is our SOAR capabilities in the product, and it helps weave the platform together, and we leveraged that very well this year, and kind of how it was a surprise. This was we got an updated message from MITRE as they go through the process. They're like, we're going to change how we're going to score this year. We're going to change how we put stuff on the website this year. And that, it's a bit of a curveball, and you have to adjust some of your strategy in terms of, how you evaluate the product. And they threw us a bit of a curveball this year, and it was, we were able to take our fusion capability and wire together both the identity module we talked about, but also our Falcon X intelligence module, and very quickly be able to adapt to that, and then it delivered really well in the test. You have this automated workflow. Suspicious IOC shows up on the device, it automatically gets processed, it gets that intelligence characterization, and then we can build additional workflows around that. And I was really pleased by and surprised by the flexibility of the platform to adapt to MITRE's changing characterization. How they're going to go ahead and approach the test. That was I guess it was really pleasing to see everything that we talk about turn into, excellent performance. Engineering team was fantastic there. So
performance. And the thing that people that like to perform and perform well, and we've been working with CrowdStrike for a little while now, and we know you all like to perform at your best. One of the favorite things is getting that evaluation. Like, how good am I and where can I improve? What was your reaction to the results from the evaluation, good or bad? Let's start with you, Joel.
So a couple things about the evaluation. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a language test, but it's also a protection test. And so when we got the results from round 4, we achieved the 100% protection. We knew we had to turn off several steps. That was really pleasing. It was nice to get that. We had significant improvements in our analytics score. We've advanced some of our Linux capabilities, and that showed in the test. So going around and seeing the way that the way that we executed, I was very pleased. Like, if you wanted to say, the Falcon platform, stops breaches, and you can see all the evidence of how the technologies work together in the evaluation. as a customer would use it. Like we don't have any gimmicks. It's all the same stuff that customers have access to. Yeah, that was a really pleasing, wonderful thing. Some of the things that are maybe less pleasing is the way that it seems everybody just wants to claim 100% win, and we joke a little bit. A product that's that's getting 100% is probably a product you don't want to use. Some of it, and it is a little bit of a joke, because obviously we want to strive to get the best outcome on the analytic and the visibility performance, but we want to do it in the right way. And in the nature of MITRE's got a huge emphasis on things like APIs, and they'll have a process they called get current user and credit enumerate W. There's a notion about API hooking. First, like get current user, pretty much every compiled binary in Windows does that, right? So you would not want to throw an event up in the cloud on that. You would not learn on that, and to do so, it just creates a lot of noise, and that's not healthy for customers. And so we want to make sure that we kind of solve those problems in the right way. The other thing to note is when you get into things like user mode hooking, to be able to actually solve that in a meaningful way, that's a huge compatibility problem. It actually makes a sensor worse. And one of the things that we pride ourselves on is a high quality sensor that works everywhere for everybody, and it's really fast. And so we don't want to introduce capability that ultimately makes it worse by just creating a bunch of noise for customers and a slower system. So that was kind of the disappointing, because to get the 100%, we take a little bit of a hit when we don't add that extra API characterization, and that's it's disappointing that we're in that space. But the product did exactly what it was supposed to, and we solved that in, I think, a better way. Like our intelligence platform can tell you, hey, this is actually enumerating credentials, and that's via this API that everybody uses. So if you really want to find that out, you can, but we don't do it in a way that hurts the performance or impedes a customer's ability to actually see and solve a breach.
High integrity. What about you, Andrew? Anything to add to that, to the actual results?
No, super proud of the team. I mean, it was well done. One of the things that kind of gets lost is it's 109 steps, right? And it's always it's a great benchmark, right? Like we always strive to get 100, but there's always going to be sort of edge cases. I think it was on paper, I think it was 105 out of 109. If you count the things that we saw, but MITRE was like, I don't really like that. It's 108 out of 109. We had one gap and we closed it since then, right? We said, okay, cool. And then we, made an adjustment, and that's sort of the point of the test, right? I mean, if you just, again, coming in and claiming ultimate victory is not the best, but super proud of the engineering team. They had huge sprints to get some of the capabilities Joel and his team wanted. The product, again, just worked as designed, took it out of the box, installed it, turned it on, and went to war. And it was a lot of fun. Right now, we're not having fun because, again, but that's based on marketing activity more than anything else. But there you go.
We're talking about, this idea of hitting 100%. And you gave that example, Andrew, about having to disable a setting to reset a password, essentially. And on the CrowdStrike website, it says, we were asked to disable identity protection capabilities to let the testing proceed and still achieve 100% prevention. Is that the story and kind of the example you were talking about?
Yeah, it was. I mean, they start. So first of all, I mean, the way they were doing it is the correct way to do it. If we look, we have a massive security cloud. So one of the benefits of working here is you can look back historically over tradecraft, and you can sort of, kind of lean forward a little bit to see probably what's coming around the corner. The number one tactic and technique we're seeing is valid accounts. If you look at initial access, defense evasion, privilege escalation, lateral movement, there's probably two other tactics that map. The number one piece of tradecraft we're seeing is valid accounts. People are just logging in, right? It's not like a kick down the front door, it's walk up to the front door with keys. So how do you challenge someone who's got a valid set of keys, right? And that's basically what this product does. It's kind of what it did in the test, and so we had to turn it off because the initial entry point into the range was basically a compromised set of credentials, and the product caught it, which was we couldn't have asked for anything more. Was it a mistake? Yeah. Oops. It was on by default. We should have turned it off, but it was fun to see.
Anyone that's been, watching this up to this point, they're like, what are the results? Like, tell me all the results. We just said 100% prevention, but what are the rest of the results? What came from the test and what was the outcome?
Yeah, I mean, you gotta have to really dig in, right? I kind of mentioned at the beginning, one of the things that's lost in this is sometimes seeing something isn't the right measure, because one of the things we put a high premium on is speed, right? Like if I'm a responder and there's someone actively in my environment, like I need to disrupt those operations. And so if I can just be a little bit faster than they are, or I can react a little bit quicker, I can achieve the outcome I want. If you have all this telemetry and you just pin MITRE ATT&CK language on everything, right? There's a lot of noise in the signals. And so that will just add time as you have to curate through it and try to piece a story together so you can have enough data to make an informed decision and protect your estate. So a lot of that stuff is kind of lost. I'm not big on saying names, but I'm saying this one in a positive light, so I will. Every year, Elastic actually does a really good job. They take the results, they actually ingest it into like Elasticsearch. They just post it publicly. It's just like, little squares, bars, pie charts. So you can kind of go on your own and see, kind of discern for yourself. The other thing is it's all wide open, right? So every vendor, when it says like, we showed you this, you can kind of go and look at the screenshots. And now again, 109 steps, 29 vendors, you can do the multiplication, right? It's a lot. It's an awful lot of screenshots to look at because there's 3 or 4 screenshots for every vendor for every step. So not everyone is going to look at all of them, but if you're evaluating products, pick a couple you want, take a look at some of the data. One of the other things that's lost is there's a lot of overuse of attack, right? So if you look at, there's a couple vendors, one, every time a Word document detonates, they tag it with 3 tactics and 6 techniques. And the only reason you would want to do that is if you thought MITRE was going to at some point look over your shoulder and say, do you have this tactic and this technique? Another vendor tagged that we're all pretty much cloud centric now, right? We're all cloud consoles. They had a connection from, their agent to the cloud console. It was tagged with command and control, so like, why would you tag your own connection with command and control unless you're tagging every outbound internet connection with command and control? Because if you're asked for something you don't know that's coming, right, you want to be able to show that. So some of that stuff's lost. I honestly, in this test, to your point, Ron, like I wouldn't want to be a consumer, right? Like I wouldn't want to have to go use this and be like, if my boss said like, go look at all the MITRE ATT&CK results and you pick a product for me, I'd be like, oh Lord, this is going to be very, very difficult. But some of that stuff gets lost. It's part art, part science when you pick tools like these. So, one of the things we're proud of is presenting the right information at the right time, at the right speed to the responder. And it's not really something you can measure in this evaluation.
Yeah. Actually, to get the point on speed and right information, our product is designed to be, used in combat against adversaries, right? And Andrew's talked a bunch about that. But the MITRE evaluation, it's 4 or 5 systems, no noise, no false positive testing, no performance evaluation. It's just, crank everything up to 11. Did you label the event with the thing that we're asking for? And when you consider that way, one of the biggest issues that you have to think about when evaluating and selecting a product is what's the cost of business interruption? What's the cost of a vendor mistake? How much noise? How many SOC analysts does it require to operate my solution? Those are all really, really complicated questions that will feed into the overall value. MITRE doesn't answer any of those, and that's it's something that hopefully we can work with them in the future to improve, to cover more of the security lifecycle than threat hunting and the basic prevention, because it's a mission, right? You see an attacker try to get in, you understand them, You look and see if there's anything else that happened on those devices or with those accounts. You burn the attacker's assets. They're gonna try and come in again, and you need the intelligence to figure out how to stop them the next time. Rinse and repeat forever. We in an advanced persistent threat, the P is the most important letter, right? They don't ever stop, and neither can we. So.
Absolutely. We cannot stop. We've talked about the lead up, right? We had our Rocky montage gearing up for the evaluation. We went to the evaluation, we experienced it, we got our results back. But let's talk about the future for a second. You said that, folks use this as a little bit of a marketing ploy, but there obviously is some things that you can take to make your operations, make the tech even better. What are some of the takeaways that you took from this year to make yourselves even better?
So one of the things that we looked at, and like let's be honest about the results here. There's a technique that the application protocol, encrypted protocol. The way most vendors get credit in a way that MITRE likes is just packet inspection, right? And it's important to provide some of that visibility. We've historically not done that first thing because we've got excellent visibility on the network, and honestly, if something is encrypted, like if it's properly encrypted via TLS, the whole point of asymmetric encryption is you can't decode it while the information is useful because it's too computationally complex. We took another look at that. We're gonna see if we can invest and get good capability there. Not in a way that just scores for the test. Like we're religious about making sure that we're providing capability to help stop breaches. We got some ideas. Obviously, I can't make any forward-looking statements, but it's an area that we're looking to improve next year. So that's one thing. I imagine there's some others. Andrew, do you got any?
No, I just describe what you're talking with because you're talking to four nerds, so not everyone might know, right? So in this particular scenario, right, web application protocol would be like HTTPS or SSH or SMTP. So what our product typically sees, and most EDR products see, is port and protocol. So I'll say, hey, this application is connecting over TCP on port 80 to this destination, which is very, very valuable information. What MITRE's been leaning on kind of heavily in the last 2 years is like, well, what protocol is inside that TCP stream, right? And to Joel's point, historically we've been, it's been like, don't touch my packet. So we haven't been as gung ho to kind of go that route. But after 2 years in a row, I think we're going to reevaluate. We're gonna look at some capabilities around there. But to your point, Chris, once we do that, right? Once we have that additional kind of like data source, it opens up a bunch of different doors where it's like, okay, like we send 917 events to the cloud, right? It's like we have 917 events. We just added another one. Like, how can we arrange the little puzzle to get extra signal out of the noise? And every time we do that, for me, I mean, as a nerd, it's super exciting, right? It's fun to see like what you can come up with when that stuff happens. And ultimately, all right, to both your point, like that's kind of the point of the test, right? Would we have normally done this? Probably eventually. Is this putting a little urgency on it? Sure.
It's rare that you get this perspective from two individuals that work at the vendor that, were so involved in this process. I've been on both sides, the vendor side and also the side where I'm doing corporate security, helping an organization build a security program. And, you don't really get to hear the perspective and also the nuance of some of the things that you read, like the evaluations for MITRE ATT&CK. I think you all had a very good point that's not highlighted enough, and that's how is the technology going to help business operations, or how is it going to avoid hindering business operations? You spoke a bit about how the results of the tests, are great because they show you how your solutions will detect capabilities and techniques, but not necessarily how it's going to perform in the business. How efficient is that software? What other color or insights would you like to share on top of just how good CrowdStrike did with the results? What kind of opportunities does using a solution like CrowdStrike enable organizations as a whole? Like what kind of peace of mind, advantages do you think you see time and time again working with customers and organizations?
One of the things that I'm super proud of is wherever people are on their sort of journey, right? And because, you guys sounds like you're both operators, so when you go into an organization or you start working somewhere, it can depend a lot. Geography, budget, hiring profile, leadership, right? What you find in there, aside from tooling, aside from all that other stuff, it varies from place to place. And we've architected the company in such a way so wherever you are on that journey, we can meet you somewhere, right? All the way up to like you buy our product, Falcon, and we run it for you and remediate stuff, right? Like that's the far end of like we need a lot of help. And that's all the way down to the other end of, we're on our own, like we got this, we're experienced, we know what we're doing. Just give us the tools and we will apply the people in the process to it. And I think for us, we've had a lot of success with that, right? And it's everything in between, right? Like I need a dedicated intelligence analyst, or, I need help with like cloud posture assessment. All these things, we can meet you any way. And that stuff gets, not part of the evaluation. You kind of have to dig that stuff up on your own. But when you ask like, what are some of the things about CrowdStrike that I really love and may or may not be related to this test, it's those things. One of the interesting bits I will say is MITRE is actually doing the next thing, which that one on the far right I talked about, which you typically call like MDR services, which is managed detection and response. They'll actually be doing an evaluation on that. So Joel had a great description. He described the endpoint detection and response one, the one we just did as open book, right? Where MITRE is doing things, they're telling you, book is open, go show us. The MDR one's going to be closed book. They're going to be doing stuff, and then the response team on the other end of the stick is going to have to be, they're going to have to say, show us what we did. So it'll be kind of an interesting, sort of like a nice complement to that type of test for the vendors that compete in both. So,
I would have to say that even though we might be competitors in business, we are all a part of the same industry. And as they say, high tides raise all boats. What piece of advice would you have for all those other companies out there that are either about to go through the evaluation or even thinking about going through the evaluation? Let's start with you, Andrew.
Yeah, lean into it. We test a lot, right? Joel probably the number off the top of his head. There's got to be at least 8 public tests we participate in, and it's just because we like to do it, right? And do we love our results every time? No, but every time we learn something and we're just trying to get better, right? Rather discover it in a closed environment or a controlled environment than downrange, in a customer environment. So, if you're thinking about, throwing your hat in the ring to the MITRE eval, just do it, right? Can't more not work. So lean into it, have fun, get better, test your skills, and, ultimately, your product and your customers will be better off.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely second that notion. The evaluation and putting energy into it is something that you need to think of it in terms of how does it make your product better and how can you better serve your customers. Don't go for the number, go for the right thing, have integrity. It makes a huge difference in the outcome. My very firm belief, and as Andrew mentioned, I run testing for a lot of CrowdStrike. If you do the right thing for the customer, the results will show in the test, and that's got to be the mission, right? You can't do it the other way around.
100%. For everyone out there that wants to learn more about CrowdStrike, they want to learn more about your results from the evaluation, what are the best ways that people can do that?
So CrowdStrike.com, we have stuff all over our homepage, and sales at CrowdStrike.com if you need a direct contact in the sales organization.
Excellent. Easy enough. We'll also drop a link right here for everyone to check that out. Stay up to date with CrowdStrike and all the great things that they're doing. Joel, Andrew, thank you again for jumping on the mics and video with us. We really appreciated it and had a great conversation. And with that, we'll see everyone next time.
Achieve it, they ain't wanna see the boy reach greatness. Oh no, straight from the bottom and I made it to the top. Gotta win every day, so I take it. Yeah.
Ron, what legacy do you want to leave?
Oof. When I think about legacy, I think about building a community.
If we have a vision for our lives, if we know what we want to create as a legacy, the first pillar of wealth is about becoming your best self.
Greatness is a mindset. In order to become a grandmaster, you must first be a grandmaster.